You might be there and wondering, what exactly is the midstream oil and gas industry? And in this particular video, that's what I want to explore and give you an overview of exactly what the midstream oil and gas industry is all about. And this is an important part of actually knowing the oil and gas industry or understanding how the industry operates. And this is because, in very simple terms, the oil and gas industry is actually divided into three segments. You have the upstream oil and gas sector, you have the midstream oil and gas sector, and you also have the downstream oil and gas segment, which we are going to discuss a little bit later. But for today and in this particular video, I want us to explore the midstream oil and gas segment and how it plays its role across the entire oil and gas value chain. And the reason why you might be interested or curious about the midstream oil and gas sector is because either you just want to learn about that subsector, you are a professional who wants to or is exploring opportunities to work within the midstream sector, or you are an investor or an entrepreneur who wants to tap into the business opportunities that you can be able to get or can get involved in the midstream oil and gas industry. The midstream oil and gas industry, and as the name suggests, actually represent the middle of what you can consider to be the entire oil and gas value chain. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, you have the upstream, which deals with production of crude oil and natural gas, and you have the downstream, which deals with the distribution of the petroleum product. In the middle of those two subsectors, you have the midstream oil and gas industry. And in very simple terms, the midstream oil and gas industry actually deals with the processing and refining of crude oil and natural gas. This is the part of the oil and gas value chain that helps to turn the raw products or the raw materials in the petroleum sector into the finished product. In this case, you are looking at being able to move the crude oil from the oil fields to a refinery, and then being able to process that and then getting the finished petroleum product on the other end of this process. So when it comes to the midstream oil and gas sector, what you're actually looking at is, or the largest component of the midstream oil and gas sector is the refining of crude oil as well as the processing of the natural gas. That represents the entire midstream oil and gas sector. It is the main activity that actually happens. And like the other segments of the oil and gas industry, the midstream oil and gas sector also has a value chain of its own, because we are looking at how do you move the raw products, in this case the natural gas and crude oil, from the fields to the refinery. How do you then move the finished products from the refinery to the consumer? So you have quite a lot of supportive activities, a lot of supportive action that needs to take place for the midstream oil and gas subsector to actually succeed. So you are talking of logistics, whether that is transportation in terms of truck or even crude oil pipeline or the finished product pipeline. You are looking at all other activities that would be able to support the success of the midstream oil and gas operations. And so the midstream oil and gas sector is a very huge subsector of the hydrocarbon sector as a whole. And if you are an entrepreneur, this is a place that you can participate in. We have businesses as well as entrepreneurs who have invested in such facilities as crude oil refineries. We have investors and entrepreneurs who have invested in LNG or natural gas processing facility. And also you have companies that primarily just deal with activities or economic activities that take place within the midstream oil and gas subsector. So as you can see, there is a lot that you can be able to do in this subsector, whether you are a professional who wants to do or to get a job and build a career in midstream, or you are an investor or an entrepreneur who wants to deploy his or her capital in the midstream oil and gas sector. there is a piece for you. There is something that you can be able to do. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and on this YouTube channel, I talk about oil and gas and the opportunities that you can be able to tap into when it comes to the oil and gas value chain. And if that's something that you would be interested in, especially when it comes to how you can be a supplier of goods and services to the oil and gas industry, I have created the Oil and Gas Supplier Jumpstart, which is a free resource and which you can download using the link that I'm going to put in the description below. And all I want from you today is your name, your email address, and I'm going to send that resource to you in the next couple of minutes. Learning and understanding how the midstream oil and gas industry works is going to give you the necessary background, actually the necessary capacity to be able to tap into the opportunities that are available in the midstream oil and gas sector. And there are many. And this is very powerful if you're an entrepreneur or a business person, because you can then be able to look at how you can get involved in the oil and gas industry, particularly when it comes to the midstream oil and gas sector. And as the name suggests, the midstream oil and gas sector basically is the one that links the activities that take place in the upstream sector to the activities that take place in the downstream sector. And it is part of the overall oil and gas value chain, which helps to move crude oil and natural gas from from the production side to when the consumer is actually buying the finished product. And this is very powerful because without the midstream oil and gas sector, without the ability to process the crude oil into finished product, or the ability to process the LNG into products that consumers can actually get and in a safe way and in a way that they can consume it in the best way that they can, then you would not really have an oil and gas industry. So you cannot really ignore the power and the role of the midstream oil and gas industry. In fact, the major oil and gas companies, or what you might refer to as integrated oil and gas companies, actually play a role across the entire value chain. You'll find them producing crude oil and natural gas. And then you'll also find them owning refineries where they're actually processing that crude and that natural gas into finished product. And ultimately, you'll also find them distributing and selling the finished products to the final consumer. So you can actually play a role where you are involved in the entire value chain, including the midstream, or you can just play a role in the midstream oil and gas sector. And what this means is that you are limiting your investments and economic or business activities to the midstream oil and gas industry. And we have businesses and companies that are even very huge and global, some listed in stock exchanges across the world, that only deal with infrastructure related to the midstream oil and gas industry. But being able to understand this, and I think this is where the information and knowledge of the midstream oil and gas industry comes in, equips you with being able to tap into what is emerging and what is available. You cannot be able to get into an industry without knowing how that industry works. And if you want to get into the overall oil and gas industry, it is important for you to understand the various segments of the sector. And one such sector that you need to actually understand is the midstream oil and gas industry. Now, this is just one of the three segments of the oil and gas sector, but it is one of the most important ones, and it plays a very big role in the overall petroleum sector. It is your responsibility to actually take time to understand it. And if you would want help when it comes to getting into the oil and gas industry, being able to tap into the opportunities that are available, becoming a qualified supplier of goods and services, that is a conversation that you and I can have. We can be able to explore how you can be able to do that. But in the meantime, I would actually encourage you to take your time to read more on what goes on in the midstream oil and gas sector. If you have any question, you can ask in the comment section below. But for me, the encouragement here is that you should take an initiative to understand the midstream oil and gas industry. What I have done here in this particular video is to basically give you a sort of an introduction and an overview of the midstream oil and gas industry. There is a lot that goes on, and in subsequent videos, I am also going to talk about very many other aspects of the midstream oil and gas industry. And I do hope that you'll be here to learn more about it. And the best way that you can be able to get that is to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if oil and gas, and also particularly the midstream oil and gas industry, is an area of your interest or something that you would want to get more into, I would encourage you to watch the video on your screen right now. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not, and I'm going to see you in my next video.